My name is Ken. Hi, my name is Ken
Hi.
Dennis, and I am a licensed agent in the state of Texas. And I do have to let you know that our call may be monitored and recorded today for quality assurance, okay?
Yes,
Gwendolyn, I understand you're possibly looking at some insurance coverage for you or maybe a family member?
me,
Okay,
for me, my dad.
okay. And what caused you to start looking for some protection for yourself at this time?
Because I'm 68 years old and I'm getting older.
Well, God bless you.
I had Obama.
Yeah.
I had another one, but I lost it because I took it off the automatic. And when I take it off automatically, I forget that I did that.
Yes. Oh, well, no worries. We can definitely, well, let me ask you this. How long ago was that? When did that policy expire?
He said it already expired in May.
Okay.
I talked to her yesterday. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Gwendolyn, before I go into what we do, I just have a few questions I'd like to ask you. So, I can get a better understanding of what you're looking for and to make sure that I can even help you in the first place. Would that be okay?
Yes, sir.
One of the things I would have asked her at that point, just to kind of get an idea of just the type of client that we're working with, because she already kind of gave you a red flag of the type of payer she is. So does anyone have like any idea of the question that came to my mind or what I would be wanting to ask her at that point?
Maybe say like, are we thinking about setting something up with automatic payment today? Maybe.
No, but it's about
I
the
was
payment.
I was curious why she took it off of automatic payment.
Exactly. Yeah. Just, I would definitely want to know that. It would just be more, oh, out of curiosity, what caused you to take it off automatic payment? And I definitely am going to want to know everything about that policy that lapsed so that I don't put her in the same position where she's not able to make that monthly payment. So we'll see what information you got.
Okay. So your current policy just expired. Okay. So how long have you been looking to replace that?
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Okay. Okay. And what expenses are you most concerned about your family having to pay for if something were to happen to you?
How would I feel?
No,
What
expenses are you most concerned about your family having to pay for?
Okay, before you ask that question, now you may have gone back, but in this scenario, we really need to try to stick to a certain order of things, or it's going to be awkward to go back. Sometimes people don't. So from how long has how long have you been trying to replace it to what expenses are you wanting to take care of? There's a ton of information that's missing. So as a group, let's talk about what we need to know before we can ask what expenses you're wanting to take care of. What information do we have to uncover right now? So, because her answer to the question for how long have you been wanting to replace it? And I believe she just said a long time. Go. What questions do we need to know?
What have you found so far?
Okay. What have you found? That's good. Keep going.
How long is it a long time?
Okay.
How much coverage did that other policy provide?
Right. What else? There's a really, really, really important question. These are all good, but there's a super duper massively important question that's going to help you overcome an objection that you have to ask.
What stopped you from moving ahead with one of the companies you've talked
Yes,
already?
exactly. What's prevented you from putting something in place if you've been looking for so long, right? You have to know that. Right? So, what's prevented you? So you need to know how much coverage her policy provided. You have to know that. Now, once you know that, let's pretend she said, I had a $10,000 policy. Let's pretend she had a $20,000 policy. You have the answer to that question. Now you have to ask another question. See, every time you skip a question, you miss opportunities to dig deeper. So let's pretend she said she had a $20,000 policy. What's your next question?
And how much were you paying a month for that?
Nope.
Oh.
She looking for the same amount of coverage this time?
Yes. Yes. Are you looking for the same amount of coverage this time, or has that changed for you? Right? Because now you're going to start to open up Pandora's box as far as whether or not she even liked the amount of coverage she had before. So let's pretend she had a $10,000 policy. And she said that, no, I want to, that's not even enough to cover a funeral, or that's not going to be enough. Let's pretend she says, no, I had 10,000, but that's not enough. Next question. See, probing, like we have clarifying questions that go layers deep. When you skip one, you miss all of these. Okay. So she says, yeah, I had 10,000, but that's not enough. Next question is,
Why do you feel like that's not enough?
yes. And just curious, why do you feel like that's not enough coverage? Well, it's not even enough to pay for a funeral nowadays. Now, so besides the funeral then, are there any other expenses you're concerned about your family having to pay for with this policy when you pass away? Right now we have so much more information about where she's been, what she's had before, why she hasn't made a buying decision. Like, for example, we didn't even cover that. What stopped you from putting something in place since you've been searching for so long? Well, I can't find anything that I can afford. What's your question?
What's affordable payment for you?
Nope. Don't be that direct. It's the same question asked in a different way.
Okay.
Because you cannot ask you can't ask anybody somebody's budget, because budget is based on their value, like their perceived value. People will sometimes spend more so people don't know what their budget is. Okay. So we never want to try to get a number from them, but what's a different way of asking a clarifying question? If she would have said, well, I can't find anything I can afford.
What kind of payments are you finding?
In a softer way, it's in your script.
You can ask her, what does she consider expensive? And maybe
Yes.
she can give us a dollar amount.
Well, yeah, but the actual question I'm looking for, the easiest one is, how do you mean?
Oh,
Right?
how do you mean?
That's it. How do you mean? How do you mean you can't find anything you can afford? Right? That's all you have to say. It's the most disarming response to get someone to expand on their answers. Okay. So, well, because I was paying $75 a month and I can't afford that type of payment. But she also said she was looking for more coverage because now I'm just making stuff up, right? But these are how these conversations go, right? She also said she was wanting more than 10,000, but 75 is too expensive. So now you have a lot of information. So almost now, before you move on to what expenses are you wanting to take care of, you have a really powerful opportunity right now to do what? Anyone have any ideas?
Would it be managed expectations as far
Not
as?
yet.
Not
No,
yet?
that'll be in education. You have a really good opportunity right now to respond with a really good active listening response and label that with a feeling. So in this scenario, because she's given you so much in this pretend scenario, okay, so what I'm hearing is you had 10,000 before, you you lost it because you stopped the automatic payments, and you did that because blah, blah, blah. You were hoping to get more than 10,000, but you want to pay less than what you paid before. And the reason you haven't put something back in place is because you're really having a hard time finding that. That must be kind of frustrating for you. Yes, you have no idea. Okay, well, we're gonna break this down and see if there's anything I can do to help you. And let me ask you this, besides paying for the funeral, right? See how much more layers I got from her, and how I was able to extract additional details by asking clarifying questions. If I don't ask the right questions at first, there's no way I'm going to be able to even ask any clarifying questions. So you can't skip all the surface level foundational questions that give us an idea of where she's been prior to here. So that's a really, really key thing, because now we have all these holes that we've created that we don't know how to tackle. So we're trying to formulate a plan on how we're going to sell someone. And if we skip all that, I'm kind of lost, right? I don't know which way to go. Okay, let's keep listening. And we're only 2 minutes into the call. This is how much information we can get from such a short amount of time, or how much information we have lost in such a short amount of time.
Good point.
If you were to pass away?
I'll be disappointed because I need to have insurance, and they would have to go out and do dinners and all that. I don't want that.
Okay, I understand that.
Mhm.
Okay. And so are you looking to just cover your burial and final expenses, or are you looking to maybe get a little extra money to leave your kids or grandkids? What are your thoughts?
A little extra money to leave for my husband.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now, does your husband have an insurance policy?
Yes.
Okay. And how long has he had his policy?
Oh, about a year.
Okay. Okay. So if anything were to happen to you, your husband would be the one that would go down to the funeral home, meet the funeral director, make all the decisions, and have to pay all the costs associated with the funeral, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your husband's first name?
Leonard.
Leonard. Oh, my brother's name is Leonard. Okay.
Mhm.
So I imagine you probably don't want Leonard to have to pay for all of those expenses if he didn't have to, right?
Right.
Okay. And just so I can get a clearer picture, have you given any thought to whether you want a traditional burial with plaque, casket, vault, headstone, or maybe you prefer just a cremation instead?
No cremation.
So for her, she's very open already as to feeling the pain of what not getting a policy would do, because she's already given you some clues about that. Did you hear those clues?
Mhm.
Where she said she doesn't want the bake sale, or, pass
Yeah.
it and stuff like that. So she would have been a perfect person to be open for you to ask her why she wouldn't want her husband to have to pay for that. So your husband not having to come out of pocket and pay for that, why is that so important? And now she would go deeper into her pain as to why they can't afford it and what the consequences would be. She seems very open, right, to wanting to tell you how important it is for her to have it. Because what's very interesting is that you marked this lead as not interested, right? So when you listen back to it, she's definitely very interested in getting a policy. So there's a disconnect between how what you quoted her based on what she wants to pay. And part of that is just figuring out what motivates people and setting their expectations, which we'll continue to hear.
Mm-mm. Okay, you like the traditional burial, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And how important is it
So because she wants traditional burial, do you guys see now why it would be so important to know how much coverage her other policy provided? And how much, are you looking for that much coverage now? Has that changed for you? So I have no idea how much she thinks she needs based on the traditional burial and what she had before, why it lapsed, why she hasn't put something in place. So I'm kind of like, I hope I can motivate her into buy something without extracting the pain of where she's been.
It's to you that your family has the money to carry out your final wishes of having a traditional burial with all the things you desire to have. How important is that to you?
It's important.
Okay. And so, Gwendolyn, have you thought about what would happen if you decided to do nothing and not get another policy?
Say it again.
I said, have you thought about what would happen if you decided not to get another insurance policy? What would that look like for your family?
It wouldn't look good.
Okay. Look good. Okay.
What could you have asked there? Instead of asking why, what is another way of asking a question to get her to expand on it wouldn't look good? Just another tool in your toolbox that you can use so you're not asking the same. So you have the how do you mean, you have a why question, and then there's another one that you can use that can help people expand on their answers. Anyone want to take a shot?
Nothing comes to mind right now for me.
Okay. So when she said it wouldn't look good, here's how I would have responded. Yeah. Tell me more about that.
Oh, to get her to dig a little deeper into her pain.
But
Okay.
then the mistake that sometimes agents make is they'll say something really good like that, like, tell me more about that. And then they don't shut up. And then they'll continue to talk, and then mumble, what, tell me more about that. I mean, what would they have to do? And would they have to do this? And would they have to do that? And like, you're the one that's like feeding the information instead of it's so powerful to say very little amount of words to continue to get them to expand on why it would be hard for them. Right. So definitely a few opportunities missed there. The biggest part that was missed is in the beginning. So we can try to formulate, because when you get to education, we don't have anything now to refer back to in discovery when we go to education. So you're just going to have to say the generic explanation. But the whole goal in education is you have to make it relevant to the customer. So if you don't have any information about where they've been prior to getting on the phone with you, as far as past policies and coverage amounts and why they didn't make a purchase and what's expensive to them, then you're just going to be reading. And you could have had so much opportunity to take her answers and put it in education, because now your next paragraph is all about her, which is going to make people more inclined to listen, because you're educating them through their story, not a generic explanation.
Okay.
Okay, let's keep listening.
Okay. Well, Gwendolyn, how do you feel if there was a way that you could get your final expenses taken care of at an affordable cost to you? Would that be a help to you?
Yes.
Okay. And most importantly, how would that be a help to your family?
It would be good because they wouldn't have to worry about nothing.
And no worries. I like that. Okay. Well, Gwendolyn, I know how important this is to you because I can literally hear it in your voice. So let me see if I understand you correctly. You currently don't have a life insurance policy because it lapsed back in May.
Yeah.
And you understand how important it is to have a life insurance policy to protect your family from having to have a big financial burden at the last minute. And you say you don't want them to have to do
Right.
dinners and do car washes and have to ask family and friends for money. You're looking for a traditional burial. And you know, if you didn't have the money in place for that, that would be a big trouble for your family. And you
Yeah.
said it wouldn't be a good look also. Does that
Right.
sound about right? Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, well, then now I'm going to go over what we do here at Lincoln Heritage, just so you can understand our program and you can determine whether or not if it's a good fit for you, okay? Then I will ask you some health questions to figure out what you qualify for. And finally, we'll go over some options and pricing. And then you just let me know what you'd like to do after that. Okay, it's that simple, no obligations. Okay, does that sound fair? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Gwendolyn, did you have a dollar amount in mind that you were thinking about?
50 to 60 a month.
Okay. And 50 to 60 a month. Okay. So our agency represents Lincoln Heritage Life Insurance Company, Gwendolyn, and we have been.
Now, even if you quote her something that's 50, 60 a month, why is she not going to buy?
Because well, in this scenario, if I remember correctly, 50 or 60 a month did not get her the amount of money she wanted.
Exactly.
She
Right.
would not move forward.
Right. So it would have been really helpful to know how much her other policy was for, why she canceled it, why she didn't make any decisions with anyone else, because you could have taken all that information and squashed it in education, right? So you're talking about the term versus whole life. You're doing that so you get rid of the 20,995 ideas that people have, and then you refer back to that information. So I know you said earlier that before you had a $10,000 policy, it was a little bit too much for you. It was probably 75. You're hoping to get more coverage for less money. The reality is that all insurance companies were all regulated by the Department of Insurance, or before you would say that, it would be, and you've gotten other quotes for similar amounts that are unaffordable. Is it kind of okay if I kind of share with you why that's happening, right? And this is kind of off script, but this is part of managing their expectations. So you can't leave education until they know that where they've been is exactly where they have to be. Otherwise, she's going to keep searching for something she can't get.
Okay.
So you go through the whole term versus whole life. Do you understand how you don't want term? You go through whole life, you go through all of that. At some point in there where it feels relevant, you have to take the information you learned and you have to bring it back in. And one of the things I like to use is, now that we've kind of determined whole life is where you want to be, because it sounds like you had whole life before. It sounds like the quotes that you've been getting are also whole life, and they're all about the same price, right? The reality is that we're all regulated by the Department of Insurance. And so as long as you're getting quotes for whole life, we're all going to be about the same price, right? And it sounds like how much coverage you want is a little bit more than you can pay. So I'm going to do my best to kind of explain to you how we can help maximize whatever policy you can afford, so that you don't have to stretch yourself to get as much coverage as you think you need for the amount of money that it costs to have that, something in that effect. But I would leave education with saying, the reality is you may not be able to find a $15,000 or $20,000 policy for $50 or $60 a month. And I don't want you to keep spinning your wheels and keep calling company after company after company, not finding what you're looking for. And you search so much that you happen to pass away with nothing, right? Like, my whole job is to put you in a better position so that your family at least has something to rely on, when you pass away. So planting the seed there, depending on what information I would have got, right? Because if she's saying she's not buying because the quotes she's been getting are more than she can afford, I'm going to have to bring that back in and start letting her know, like, that's the reality everywhere. But then when I get to FCGS, I really better do a good job of talking to her about how she doesn't need as much coverage with us because we're going to save her money on the casket. We're going to look at the invoice from the funeral home. We're going to go line item by line item, and we're going to make sure there isn't any charges on there that shouldn't be on there, right? And make her feel really good about the fact that she can get a smaller policy with us that she can afford with the $50 or $60 because of all of these reasons. And then do a lot of checking in. Do you like the idea of that? Do you see how getting a policy with us would allow you to stay within the budget, even if you have to get a little bit less than what you were hoping to get, right? So I'm doing all of these questions to get her to say, yeah, I see that. Yeah, that makes sense. I have to get her to say that to me. And even saying things like, so if we couldn't find as much coverage as you were hoping to get, would it make sense to get something smaller, knowing that your family would have an advocate to make sure that everything was as absolutely low as possible, right? Like really, because that's the objection you have to overcome. So when you know what the objection is, you have to play on that the entire time and ask for all these buying signs along the way, especially for the FCGS, because for her, that's what's going to sell the policy, because we have to get her to understand that she's not going to be able to get as much coverage as she wants for her budget. But right now you don't know that because all you know is 50 to 60. You don't know everything else that I just kind of made up. Right. So it's really hard to do that when you're missing all this information.
Finding final expense insurance and funeral protection to families for the last 60 years. We also specialize in working with seniors who are living on a fixed income, which means all of our programs are customized to fit your affordability, because we realize if you can't afford it, you can't make the payments, the policy will cancel, and that wouldn't do you or your family any good. So we're all about making sure it's affordable for you. Now, you share with me that you're living on a fixed income, right? Is that Social Security or disability? Okay. And is that money being directly deposited into your bank account, or do they put that on a direct express debit card?
No,
your bank account. Okay, good. And who do you bank with?
Navy Federal Credit Union.
Oh, so do I. I'm a Air Force veteran. Were you or your husband in the military?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, it's important, Gwendolyn, to me that we find something that feels comfortable, because if you can't afford to make the payments, the policy cancels and it's not going to do anyone any good anyway. And the first thing I want you to know, Gwendolyn, is that Lincoln Heritage is the #1 final expense company in the nation. And we only provide permanent whole life protection as opposed to term life, which is temporary. For example, you probably see the advertisements online, TV, and in the...
Is there a reason that you said that we're the #1 final expense company in the nation? Curious.
Because
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's good. I just want to know where it came, like why you wanted to say that.
well, I read it in the literature of Lincoln Heritage, like on their website and stuff. So that's why I resounded that.
Okay. So do you think that you're the only person who says that you're the #1 company? Do you think that other people are like, we're the #3 company?
No, they probably always say they're the best company.
Everyone's always going to say they're the best company. And so even if it's true, according to what we believe, that is actually a line that will make people think you're a salesperson. Like, right. Like with not really knowing, but we're the #1 this, we're the best at this. It just comes across as salesy. The way that you build true value is by asking the right questions, right? Labeling that with how that's making them feel, recapping, asking clarifying questions so you really understand. Now we get to educate them. And where we're really going to be building that true value is in managing their expectations, educating them, and then talking about the FCGS. We could be like the worst company in the country, but if you have a good sales process, that's the whole key, right? So it's not good, it's not bad, it's just not necessary, right? Because I don't want to do anything that would make me sound like I'm saying something to get a sale. That's all.
Email showing coverage amount for $20,000 in coverage for $9.95 a month from companies like AARP, Globe Life, even Colonial Penn. Their commercials all over the TV, right? Those are
Yeah.
perfect examples, Gwendolyn, of companies who are advertising their term or temporary protection program. It only lasts a few years, and then they want you to keep renewing, and every time you renew, the price goes up. And then it ends up canceling at 80 years old anyway, because term life never goes past 80 years old, right? So now whole life protection policies are the exact opposite. Here at Lincoln Heritage, we don't do term life, temporary policies. We only do whole life. These policies last their entire life.
Okay, all right. So we actually probably should have listened to the whole thing, but for everyone who is listening to that, do you see now how important it is to have strategic pausing and ask clarifying questions? Because you just went through term and then whole life without taking a breath. Like you went from term to whole life without skipping a beat. It was so fast that even though she was like giving you some verbal clues, that doesn't necessarily mean that she agrees that term isn't what she wants. That's what you said, right? So do you see how maybe a temporary policy might not be the right answer if you're just going to outlive it, right? Because you said you wanted something to take care of burial. So I want you to know that when you see those ads, that's a big red flag, that those are temporary policies and you need to stay away from them, right? Like ad lib and go above and beyond the words on the script. So you're driving that point home and really making sure that they understand. Like that's so important because you're overcoming an objection in this part right here before you move on to whole life. So what objection are we overcoming in this part of the script?
We're overcoming the fact that they want a larger policy, which will probably only be term, but term is not possibly the best option for their family.
Yeah, we're overcoming an objection of it's too expensive. That's the objection, because if they don't really understand that they can't get what they see, like, and they haven't told you that they understand it and that they know why they don't want it, then I'm not convinced that we're on the same page. Your whole goal here, they need to be convincing you, right? That is not what they want. So you explain it to them, you educate them, and the only opinion that matters is your customer's opinion.
Okay.
Right? Do you see how this one might not, I'm not telling them, do you see how this one might not be the best option? Why do you feel that way? Okay, now let's move on to whole life. So if you're missing a lot, you're having a monologue right now, right? You're not having a dialogue. A dialogue includes checking in, asking questions, and getting them to actually talk, not just say, yeah, like those small little verbal cues. That's not engaging your customer into having it participating in the conversation. So really, really important there before we move on to whole life.
Okay.
The coverage amounts are lower, but once approved, your payment can never go up, your coverage can never go down, and it can never be canceled at any age. It's permanent and it lasts your entire life. Also, Gwendolyn, whole life policies after a year, they start to gain cash value that you can use for whatever you want. You can use the cash value to help pay your monthly insurance premium. So let's say you have a tight month, right? You can just call up the insurance company and say, hey, if I got cash value on my policy, use that cash value to pay for my premium. That helps to protect your policy from ever canceling or expiring, okay? And these are the types of policies people get, Gwendolyn, to make sure that funeral costs and final expenses are paid for because it's permanent. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Does it feel like this is the type of plan you want, a permanent plan that lasts your entire life?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move on now to why people choose Lincoln Heritage, just so you know why people like our company. for their final expense coverage than any other insurance company. You see, the majority of life insurance companies, Gwendolyn, typically take somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks to pay out because they have to wait on a death certificate from the county. And by law, it can take up to 6 months. Did you know that?
No.
It can take up to 6 months sometime, but usually it's 4 to 6 weeks. And when it comes to paying for your funeral, your family just won't have that kind of time, Gwendolyn. It can take weeks for their funeral home to even provide the family the death.
I don't hear anything.
It's called the
Sorry,
Funeral
guys.
Consumer Guardian
Let me go
Society.
back.
This is a non-profit organization that is designed to
Well,
get
let
your
me go back. Okay, so basically you're just, how much did you guys miss? Like 30 seconds?
Yeah, just a small amount.
Okay. So even here, when you're explaining the FCGS and the importance of the payout,
Mhm.
you have to get your customers to engage. The most important lesson that we're learning on this call is not just in the importance of extracting more information in discovery, but you have to have a dialogue with your customers. And this is unscriptable, right? You have to figure out how to get your customers to talk. So when you're talking about how long it takes for someone to pay out and they said they didn't know, now you have to refer back to why they wanted this policy in the first place, right? Because you asked why wouldn't you want your husband to come out of pocket? And you take that answer and you put it here because we don't know, so I'm just going to make something up again. Let's pretend she said because he wouldn't be able to afford it and he'd have to, have a GoFundMe and do all of this. So now you have that answer, right? Because you asked the why question. And so now you take that information and you put it here. So think about it, Gwendolyn. If it takes 4 to 6 weeks for the policy to pay out, where would that leave your husband, right? Because you said earlier that if he didn't have a policy, he'd have to have a GoFundMe, he'd have to do this, he'd have to do that, he'd have to do this. But the funeral homes need to get paid now, right? They're not going to wait 4 to 6 weeks. So what position would that put your husband in yet again if he had no money to pay for your funeral when the funeral home needed the money, right? He'd have to do the GoFundMe. He'd have to do this. He'd have to do that until he got reimbursed. And what type of position would that leave him in then? Right? So everything that you're doing in the script, you have to take the information that you got from discovery, which is why discovery is the most important part, because it gives you everything that you need to make the script relevant to your customer. Right? Where
Makes
would that
sense,
leave
yes.
them if, because all this, her why is where you put it here now. Right? You told me this, but isn't that crazy? Right? Because you went through the whole death certificate thing really fast too. That's information that someone is hearing for the very first time. And when you go too quickly and you don't pause and you don't give specific examples as it relates to the customer, they're not even going to have time to absorb it. So it's not going to mean anything to them, or it's not going to mean as much to them as it could than if you drove that point home. Right? You got to drive the point home and make it hit them where it hurts them, not just on a very generic level, because you have an opportunity to really tell a story, put them in that actual time when she did pass away. What does that look like for her husband? And you take her answers and you bring it back here, right?
Yeah.
Here's how we would protect him from that, right? And now you go in and save the day. Because when we get the call from your husband that you've passed, we have a whole process to avoid all of this, right? We get to work right away. We have a program called the Funeral Consumer Guardian Society. And the whole reason it was founded is to make sure your husband doesn't have to go through any of that. We will actually pay him before the death certificate is even received, right? Can you imagine that? Nobody else does that. So now he has the money that he needs to take care of business. So he doesn't have to do this and he doesn't have to do that. Do you see how much more powerful that would, how much more of an impact that would have on your husband if he knew he'd get that money right away, as opposed to waiting 2 months? That's a long time, right? So I'm going to sit here in these points for a long time until I know they have felt the weight of how important it is to not wait that long to get paid out. And for those of you who haven't yet immersed yourself into FCGS Plus, you will get tons of real life stories and examples on how we do pay out families the same day, within 24 hours. It all depends upon how quickly the beneficiaries sign their paperwork. But there have been stories, right, where we pay in 50 minutes directly to the funeral home. We have used our credit card to buy clothes for the funeral, so they can make sure that they show up with grace and dignity to send their loved ones off, right? You got to like say these, you have to share these types of stories to make what we're saying real. Otherwise, it's not real. It's just, this is feature and benefit 1, this is feature and benefit 2, this is feature and benefit 3, and then we move on to quotes, right? And it didn't really mean anything to them. It didn't hit home. Has to hit home. It's fcgsplus.com. So at the end of this call, before we end, I'll do a quick little recap of that site before we end.
And we paid right away within 24 to 48 hours, not 4 to 6 weeks. And also they make sure that your family isn't overcharged or taken advantage of by the funeral home. So when you pass away, the Funeral Consumer Guardian Society will immediately contact your funeral home, and they will send them paperwork as a promise for the funeral home to send the death certificate once they have it. Gwendolyn, that's all we need at Lincoln Heritage to activate your claim and pay your family within 24 to 48 hours of approval, not 4 to 6 weeks like other insurance companies. And Gwendolyn, would it be fair to assume that the main reason you're looking into this is to not burden your family when you pass, correct?
Right.
So, Gwendolyn, if they had to wait 4 to 6 weeks to get paid, where would that leave them? They would still be in the same position with no money up front to take care of things.
Did you see how you just answered that question for her?
Yeah.
Right? So remember, it does not matter how you feel about things or the answers you tell your client. Telling is not selling, right? That's like the most old school sales advice that you'll ever hear is telling is not selling. That's exactly what you just did, right? If you're going to ask a powerful question like that, where would it leave them? If it took, 4 to 6 weeks to get paid, then you zip it. The only thing that matters are the words that come out of your customer's mouth. Now, I know we're picking on Ken today, but
Oh, no.
everybody does this.
I need the feedback.
It's not just you. Because a lot of it comes from nerves. A lot of it comes from, I need to get through this 126,000 page script, right? Because that's what it feels like when you're first starting, but it's not. It is actually a tool to have a powerful conversation with people. If you allow it to do what it's intended to do, which is engage your customer the entire time throughout the process, challenge them on what would happen if this took place. What would happen if that took place? What type of impact would that actually have? How would that make them feel? How would that make you feel? Right? So it is all about getting them to sell themselves on the information that we're providing, right? All we're doing is educating. They need to tell us why they like it, not the other way around. Right? So everything from the beginning of the call up until this point, there's so much missed opportunity that can you clearly see now after listening back to it and hearing my feedback, where that opportunity was missed for you to be able to drive that emotional momentum home?
Oh,
So
yes,
that-
without a doubt.
From you? That's the whole goal. There is no emotional momentum here because it's only you talking. And she's going like, yeah, that's what's happening in this call. It's not like this.
So Dana, when you get someone who just won't give you no verbal answers, what do you do? I mean,
Okay, wait, hold on. Before I answer that question to the team,
mhm.
did Ken even give his customer an opportunity to have verbal answers?
Go ahead, speak up. I won't be embarrassed. Be truthful. But no, a lot of times I did not give her an opportunity to answer, yes.
That it's not that she wasn't opening up, right? That's a total mistake of the way that you're thinking. It's not that she doesn't want to talk or open up or give you answers. It's you didn't give her the space to do it. You didn't ask her open-ended questions or clarifying questions that would give her the opportunity to share her story with you. That's it, right? Because you were too busy talking.
She was pretty open in the
My sales
beginning.
pitch. She was very opening. She was very open in the beginning, and then you closed her. Right? So the reason why, again, I've said this a million times, the reason why objection handling is the last priority on my coaching list, like last priority, is because you can't overcome objections that you created in the first place. Right? And we as agents create the sales objections that we get at the end because of everything that we failed to do before we got to that point. Right? Now, if we did everything perfectly, then we really focus on objection handling because all we're doing at that point is helping someone get out of their own way.
Okay.
Right? But when you miss the roadmap on how to sell them, then it's really impossible because you didn't get them to the point where they felt that emotional tension that they had to make a change because it was just kind of you talking. And at the end, they just based it on price.
Good feedback.
So,
Right.
Gwendolyn, here's how Lincoln Heritage protects your family from all that nonsense. When you receive your policy in the mail, the Funeral Consumer Guardian Society will also include a final wishes guide and 5 ID cards. This is where you tell us what you want to have happen when the time comes. You'll send back the final wishes guide in a prepaid envelope so we can store all of those details with your insurance policy. You'll then hand out the ID cards to your family members. So if something happens to you, we can get a call from one of your family members. We'll already know what to do. Now, while we're processing your claim, Gwendolyn, to get your family paid within 24 to 48 hours, we also get to work on what your family is being charged. If we have to, we'll even price shop 3 to 4 funeral homes, Gwendolyn, in your area to ensure that any money we can save from your insurance policy, it stays with your family, with your husband, right? Also, you were looking for a traditional burial. So traditional burials cost anywhere from $8,500 to $15,000. And we can typically save between $2,500 to $2,000 on the initial quote because our guys go in and they negotiate with their funeral company to lower their prices, right? A lot of the money is for the casket, Gwendolyn, which can be one of the most expensive items in a burial. For example, a popular casket right now is a light blue 18-gauge steel Batesville casket. And the funeral homes are typically selling this casket for $3,000 to $5,000. Gwendolyn, take a wild guess as to how much it costs the funeral home to buy the casket.
48%. I just buried my son. That was 20 years ago. That was like 2,000.
Yeah. So even today, caskets are anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000.
All right, pause again. We might go over an hour in case everybody's okay with that. She just told you something really, really, really sad, and you ignored it. Okay, what did she just tell you?
Well, she was telling me about the situation with a loved one who had passed away.
Which loved one?
I think her mom or somebody like that.
Hmm.
Her son.
Okay.
Or a son, okay.
Son.
Yeah. So this is where we get a chance to be human, right? Instead of like asking her, do you have any idea how much caskets cost? Or I forget what the actual word was. And she said, you know, I just buried my son. And then she said 20 years ago, which probably makes me want to say, wow, even though it was 20 years ago, it probably just feels like it happened yesterday, right? You never lose, you know, the grief of losing a child. And I would want to sit there. I want to sit there for a few minutes and talk about what that experience was like. And did your son have life insurance? And how did that impact you and the rest of your family? Right. And you don't want to relive that experience again before we move on to the next thing we want to say on our script.
Okay.
Right. So it just kind of feels to me that you're rushing to get through it, but you have to remember that the faster you get to a quote, the lower the chances of you closing the sale. And sometimes it's, even though I say we should be at about 22 minutes at health questions, there are definitely times where we need to take a moment and talk about somebody's story, right? Because I can't even imagine what that would be like to lose a child. And even though we're trying to make a sale, we still have to remember that we're both human beings, right? We have to take a moment and acknowledge what she just told us, or it'll feel like how would that make you guys feel if you told a salesperson, yeah, I lost my son 20 years ago, and they're like, yeah, the casket still costs $5,000 today, right? It doesn't match. It's like, did you even hear what I just said? Right? It's an important part of the sales process to, oh my God, right? How'd he die? Right? You gotta challenge yourself to really listen to what your customers are saying. That's not necessarily going to sell the policy, but if we did everything right up until that point, and now we're getting even deeper into the pain of it, it will definitely make an impact because we're continuing to get into that emotional need. But where you kind of missed, well, actually, let's keep going.
But would you believe that it only costs the funeral home $900 for the casket, but then they go and charge you $3,000 to $5,000? So if the funeral home refused to lower their price,
That would have been a good time for a strategic pause, right? You just said something really important, which is, would you believe it's only $900? Pause, right? That's an opportunity for you to get them to engage in what you just said. So you do a lot of just pushing through the script and just regurgitating all this information. I don't even really know how she feels about it. All I know are the small words that she's been saying. So you need to focus on asking questions, pausing, getting your customer to participate in the conversation. They have to.
Okay.
Like a critical part of the sales process. If your customer isn't talking or telling you their opinion about how they feel about things, you will lose. Or you'll get laydowns, and you can't live in the world of laydowns, because if they're a laydown to you, who else are they going to be a laydown with? The next
Excellent.
one calls them, and your sales canceled.
Yeah.
Okay. So everything we do isn't just about how to get the sale now, it's also about how to keep the sale.
Funeral Consumer Guardian Society, they can buy the same exact casket at cost and have it shipped with next day air to any funeral home in the country for about $1,500, including shipping. So that's $900 for the casket, and the rest is shipping. Right? Now, instead of all your policy money going to the funeral home, Gwendolyn, most of it would now stay with your husband and your family for what they need it for. No other insurance company offers this program, Gwendolyn. So does this feel like this could be the answer for you?
Yeah.
Very good, very good. Because not only do they get your family paid within 24 to 48 hours, but they actually go in and negotiate.
All right, what mistake is he making right here?
Why? But why though? I would.
A
but why-
version of that, in a version of that, right? I want you guys to challenge yourselves to ask the why question in a way that doesn't sound like, but why though, right? Like in a condescending way.
Yeah.
So what you did again, Ken, was tell her why she wants it instead of you challenging her to tell you, right? You have to get her to talk you into selling her a policy, not you talking her into buying a policy. Right? Yeah, I do see that. What part of it did you like the best? Right? What did you like about it the most? She has to say it, not you. I'm going to say it a bazillion, 100 million, quadrillion times. Your customer has to say it, not you.
Create the cost, so your family have much cheaper costs. Because they know that when a family comes to the funeral home grieving, those funeral directors, they take advantage of a grieving family and they try to run the cost way up, okay? All your family have to do is make one phone call to us, Gwendolyn, and we take care of everything, right? With all the things you desire to have. So Gwendolyn, I don't have much more to go over with you about our company and what we do and what we represent. It looks like we have covered all the basics of what you might be looking for. So before we go into the health questions, so I can put together a quote for you, is there anything you'd like to ask me at this time?
No.
All right, so we're at 17 minutes. So a little bit early into where I would rather you be at. So you had 4 or 5 extra minutes to play with, where your customer could have done all the talking in that 4 or 5 minutes, right? Which would have just, and then you also just skipped the most important part of bringing everything together, which is what?
The hospital story.
Why is that story so important?
Because you just want to make sure they kind of picture everything that you just kind of painted for them, you know?
And if you had done a really, really good job at everything we've talked about today in this training, they would have already felt the weight of the world of the impact of not getting a policy with us because of the pain we've pointed out, solutions they've pointed out. They've talked just as much as we've talked. And now you're going to bring it all together for them when we get them to picture in their mind what's going to happen moments after they take their last breath. Right? The sales process is just like a what? What have I recently been saying lately? The sales process over the phone has to be just like a what?
Audiobook.
Why?
You're telling a story.
And what do you have to get your customer to do in their mind when you're telling the story?
Feel it.
They have to picture it.
Feel. Picture. Feel.
They have to picture it in their mind. Books and audio, this is our version of an audiobook. How boring would a book be if they just had generic explanations of what the characters were doing and you couldn't really picture the characters in their mind and what they were doing and the color of the sky and the breeze brushing on their skin and all the descriptive language that they use to put yourself in the actual story. When you're skipping this kind of stuff, you're missing opportunities to have your customer put themselves in that moment. Okay. If you do not get your customer to a point of emotional tension, they will not feel enough pain to make a change. Right? That's the only way we are going to get people to make a decision now, is the creating sense of urgency through what will happen if I don't do this. This is my answer. She is not sold, right? In my opinion, listening to this call, she has not said anything to you that tells me she wants this policy. It's you've been telling to her why she should have it. right? Does everybody hear that?
Yes.
Okay. So, without going through all of the health questions and everything, plus what I was going to say before, and then we're going to pause here and go to FCGS real quick, FCGS plus. You had another perfect opportunity in FCGS land to extract information from Discovery if you would have gotten it and put it here, right? Which was, I know you were really hoping for that $20,000 policy, but you really wouldn't need as much with us because we would be able to just save you a couple thousand on the casket alone, right? Imagine everything else we can do to work on. So if you don't make it relevant to their story, if you stay generic, it won't mean as much to them. Okay, so discovery is the single most important thing that's going to set the tone for the rest of your conversation. Let's see what you got at the end. I'm going to download it so I can fast forward it.
No,
Oh, diabetes, okay. Let you know when somebody's coming. 10%. If you were to pass away in the second year,
And she was modified.
Yeah.
I kind of, you can start getting really good at telling if, based on how someone talks, if they have COPD,
Oh, wow.
right? Just because her voice to me sounded a little bit like she had COPD, but was that
Raspy
where she
type
had
voice.
it?
Okay.
Do you remember if that's what made her modified?
Oh, yeah. She had, it was COPD
It has
and
COPD. Okay. So I probably would have started like tiptoeing in there a little bit throughout my conversation. Because now we have to manage her expectations even further, right? Not only can she not get as much coverage as she wants, it's going to be double the cost. So even more important to understand the quote she was getting, right? Why she didn't buy, because we have to really make sure she understands that this is her reality and that it's going to be like this no matter where she goes. And if you're going to get a policy, wouldn't you rather get one that's going to do all of this for your family rather than just a check that they might get in 2 months, right? So it's not about just why get a policy with us. We're also doing so much more, right? We have to take them from what they think they can get to what their reality is. And we know that you're going to get a policy. It's just where are you going to get one? And if you had to choose between this one and this one, if they're the same price, which one are you going to get? You have to make them feel comfortable to make an uncomfortable decision. Let's see.
Here, the extra $100,000, and it cost us over $6,000 just to bring their body back home.
yeah, but
Do you have a paper and pencil? I'm gonna go over the payment. The death amount would be $3,970. $3,970. Now let me increase it to $60, because you said between 50 and 60 a month, and see what that gets us. Okay, a $60 a month payment, you will have a death benefit of $4,392 a month. $4,392 a month.
a month.
Assuming we could get you approved, Gwendolyn, which one of those do you think would help your family out the best?
none,
None of them.
I need 10,000.
I need 10,000. Wouldn't have that been helpful to know in the beginning?
10,000.
Yeah.
Right? Right. Okay. So that was a great call to listen to. Do you see how it would have been pretty much impossible to overcome that objection?
Yes. Yes.
Right? Because we just miss so much. We miss so much to be able to take her down the path of what she thinks she can get versus what her reality is. Any questions, you guys, on that call? Any thoughts? Anything you want to share? Ken, what did you learn?
Well, I learned a great deal. I learned that I definitely have to go a little slower. I have to allow the customer to express themselves. And if they just give me a yay or a no, I need to get them to dig deeper on that answer. I definitely have to find good place in the script, because I know a lot of times I'll lose my place in the script because I'm still trying to learn the script, and then I'll end up ad-libbing until I can find my place again. So I got to get better at that. You know, based on what their question is, I need to scroll down to an answer or response that makes sense. Because I know the first couple of days I started, the people would give me an answer and I was just following the script and it wasn't even making sense what I was saying. So then I started to try to scroll through to make sense, and then I would lose my place. So I'm still working on that I need to get better at. But one of the main things, I need to make sure I'm listening to the client, give them a chance to explain. And when they do say something, I need to try to dig deeper to try to get that pain and that emotion. And then later on in the script, when I'm in different parts, like the educational part and the FCGS part, I need to bring back that pain they told me earlier and make it fit into that place as well. Yeah, I got a lot to improve on. But, you know, this has been great. I definitely appreciate the feedback. You're awesome, Dana. How you can come off the cuff with those comebacks is beautiful. Can I clone you? Until I can get this.
That's the whole goal.